should be removed totally. 9 said no. All right. So that's our poll this morning. And yeah, that's our poll this morning. So maybe we could poll our guest one time.
Yeah, as soon as he comes online, he's connected, but not
I think
online.
he's there. He's there already. He's just muted.
Yeah.
Ah,
there he is. Good morning to Mr. Rajiv Diptee, co-host. What's happening? You're muted still. All right, there you go.
Good morning. Good morning, Steve, Wendell, Paul, Ruben. Good morning to the team. Happy to be here with you all today.
All right.
Recording in progress.
Thank you, Dorothy. Let's ask you a question, Wendell.
Yeah, our poll this morning, Rajiv, was do you agree with Minister Brian Manning, that the subsidy on premium should be removed completely? He had made that comment in his presentation in the parliament towards the budget.
I would have listened to quite a few politicians making their post-budget remarks, Wendell. And the truth is that I feel that these guys could have been a little bit more empathic to the population, especially when they're being asked to share in the adjustment right now, because we're all facing higher fuel prices. We're all being asked to share in the burden of adjustment, and there's so much more that, you know, right now we're all facing a higher cost of living. We're facing a higher cost of living in fuel. We're facing a higher cost of living in food. We're facing a higher cost of living generally, and it's not just Trinidad and Tobago, it's globally. And it's something that I feel a lot of citizens have spoken to me about this, and they're all saying, you know, this could have been held off. However, it's something we now have to deal with, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And
so is it? So yeah. I know you've gone into your present, but is it that I want to vote on the poll first before we go into the details, because a lot of them have said things that they don't need to say. And they shouldn't have said, you know,
absolutely agree.
To make the case.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah. But so do you agree that the subsidy on premium should be removed?
No, I do not.
Okay.
I do not.
Right.
Yeah. So, but also the premise upon which the statement was made, morning Rajiv, sorry about that,
morning, Paul.
was that everyone who uses premium is driving a luxury vehicle, which is an erroneous premise.
Rubbish.
Let me tell you something, guys. We are all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and the truth is that citizens of Trinidad and Tobago enjoy a subsidy, and this is regardless of the type of vehicle you choose to drive, and whether you choose to put, super premium diesel, or super premium as the gas might go. The reality is that yes, we know that these subsidies have been clamoring to be changed over years. Was it the right time? I'm not sure. And this is something that I feel that we have maybe we've been a little bit too entitled. Maybe we've been spoiled over the years. But the reality is that we just came out of COVID-19. A lot of us had savings eroded. We had we're all poorer after COVID-19. And the truth is that, the language that is being communicated to us now can be a lot kinder, and that is where I'm disappointed at the level of government.
Now, the issue about what is the right time, if we look at the last, since 2014, and look at the volatility in the global space, the issue related to energy prices, the pandemic, there's always something that has come up, and there's seemingly always something that's going to come up. There are some who suggest, in relation specifically to the subsidy, that it's better to have the gradual reduction than have a drastic reduction. So there is a sentiment also there that, well, the issue is not necessarily the against that reduction of the subsidy, in the issue of the language and the narrative being proffered. And this is not about sacrifice, but the examples of sacrifice, while people seem to be asking for sacrifice, but not sacrificing themselves at this point. They're talking about when they used to sacrifice a long time.
Yeah,
but they're talking about the sacrifice now. You understand? And that is the issue. And that's the insensitivity that I think that people are very up against.
Yeah, Paul, you know, there's a lot of insensitivity right now. And I think that when you're communicating to our population this sensitive to all the price increases that they're feeling, the only pain that is being felt, you need to say it in a you really need to be straight, you need to be empathic, you need to be direct. And I don't think the population would have had half as much a problem if you were just straight up with them.
Yep.
Stop talking down to them. And that really is the whole issue. Even in the business community, we've been discussing this for the last week. Don't talk down to them, talk to them and let them know what's happening.
Which is
Well, part of it too is that there's a presumption that you saying you sacrificed when you were a child, and this is the education minister, Minister Kojo and others, suggest that we weren't sacrificing long ago also. We were all sacrificing.
Yeah.
I wasn't sacrificing alone.
Yeah, I fully agree with that because you know, I mean, listen, I'm a citizen and I'm as disappointed as you guys in how it's been being said. I've seen the clips on social media. Everybody been sending me on WhatsApp what these guys have been saying and how they've been saying it, and it's just something that I feel like they're very out of touch, and that's just something that needs to be addressed. And
you know, Rajiv and Paul, it's not even so much how it's being said, you know, it's why it's being said. There's no need to say the things that you're saying to justify what we all know is happening worldwide.
But I understand a government sending out its troops, to be fair, defending a budget that the government has presented and saying let's have a talking point of sacrifice. There's absolutely nothing wrong.
Yeah, correct.
Asking the population, let's all bear the burden together, which is essentially what sacrifice is about. What is the examples they're using?
Yeah. Paul, totally agree with you. And that's where this word empathy, because you know, we have people, we have children listening to this, we have families listening to this, and what kind of message are you sending to these people that it's okay to be condescending, it's okay to be and this is where we talk about leadership and language, and when we talk about the change and the socioeconomic influence, you guys are setting the tone, and the tone is not good, and that needs to change.
No one who has made sacrifices over the years and have come from point Z to point B should have to justify at this point in time where they are. Nobody.
Wendell and Rajiv, even people who are at the so-called higher socioeconomic brackets can also say they've made sacrifice in their context.
Yeah, that's what I said. So, but there's no need to.
They make a different level of sacrifice to us, but they could say, "Well, we didn't get 200 million profit; we get 100 million profit. There's a sacrifice to them."
Because by the same token, you could say these same people are the ones who are buying motor vehicles, the best kind for the best prices with all the exemptions that they receive, and they've never experienced a salary cut once during COVID. So how are they sharing in the adjustment? It's a little bit hypocritical from that point of view also. So you have the population questioning the scruples of the people who are telling them that they should be making sacrifices.
You're drawing unnecessary attention on yourself at this point in time.
Correct.
But again, it's not the issue of sacrifice, because clearly where the position we and other places in the world are, there is a level of sacrifice required, because it's not business as usual, but it's not about the actual principle of sacrifice, it's the messaging. Let's move on to the issue of the subsidy and its impact on the Supermarkets Association and retailers.
Well, guys, the truth is that once the cost of fuel goes up, everything goes up, and that's a rule of thumb in the world that we've come to know. And in our world, it's not instantaneous. So a supplier of goods would measure the impact of their operations and how that affects them. Now, the bigger the supplier, if it's Nestle or if it's Vemco, I'm just using some examples here, they may be able to absorb some of that price increase in fuel, because they will look at fleet and they will look at the cost of fleet and how that and what that is as a percentage of operation, how that impacts them. Now, when we look at distribution, they're going to be distributors that say, oh gosh, we need to add in 1% or 2% to our bottom line to ensure that we cover for the increase. So it's something that we've been getting price increases throughout the last 2 years, and it's something that's been constant. And it's been constant because of COVID. It's been constant because, well, recently because of the war in Ukraine. And these things are things that will continue to be coming. And when we get the price increases, we aren't even sure sometimes if it's because of fuel. It's because sometimes the supplier doesn't even tell you what it's related to. And it could be related to cost of inputs or cost of production. And in this case, this is something that everyone is going to work out into their bottom line. But you have that very real public perception that once the cost of fuel goes up, everything else goes up. So I am getting stores prepared right now to, for the inevitable fact that there will be some price increases coming our way.
When you say we're talking across the board here, Rajiv?
Yeah. Yeah, we are talking across the board, Wendell. The price increases will come. And to be honest, it's something that it's not just them, it's a lot of the factors that they will have to. I mean, we have employees to pay, so we'll have to make sure that they're catered for. We'll have services related to transportation that may take a hike, so that those will go up as well. And that's where everybody's going to try to find the sweet spot to add it in. Now, it doesn't have to be a lot, it's going to be small, but it depends on the size of the company. The bigger the company, the more they could absorb. The smaller the company, they'll just have to pass it on.
Yeah, because I saw on Facebook over the weekend, somebody posted an example of bleach, breeze, soap powder that they would have bought that had gone up so much that it kind of shocked them, because they say they generally buy online and they buy the same things every month. So they just copy and paste the list and send it out.
Yeah.
And they saw that they had paid so much more the following month for items that they would have bought the previous month. And when the person actually went through the list, they realized it was the cost of Breeze soap powder that had gone up so much. What would account for something like that?
Guys, I can't speak directly to the Breeze, right? But I don't know if you looked at yesterday's Guardian. We provided some excellent examples of how over the last 2 years, 2020 to 2021, and then 2021 to 2022, where the price increases have been so dramatic. And in all my time here, and I can't emphasize this, there have been suppliers that have been telling me they've never lived through a period like this. I think you would have seen something like over 100% increases in some items. We looked at pigtail, mackerel, corned beef, oil, sugar, and by the SKU, you can look at the 500 ml oil, you can look at the 1 gallon oil. And if you look at the price increases over the last 2 years, some of them would in fact cross 100%. And it's just been ridiculous. And I mean, when we listen to the figures being put out there by, I wonder if it was the CSO that said we had 3% food price inflation. And then you look at the particular price point of some of these SKUs, it's quite a lot. So the population has had to face that, and I can understand their frustration right now, especially when you tell them you now have to face a higher fuel price on top of all of that. And we can't do absolutely nothing about the food price inflation, because it's just something we have to buy the goods, right? We're not making any of it, we're not producing it, we have to buy it regardless of the price, because this war in Ukraine has gone to the next level, with Russia trying to annex parts of Ukraine to form part of a mother Russia. So it's something that has just been crazy, and we aren't seeing a let up right now. We are praying that the price increases. It's very difficult to predict a peak inflation period. But in my personal opinion, and I'm just proffering my personal opinion here, I would say that we are somewhere in the midst of that peak inflation period where price increases are going to become less and less, and that hopefully by February of next year or March of next year we start to level out.
Well, that's going to be my next question. What do you
Explain that.
expect this impact to be
Yeah,
coming up to this Christmas season? I mean,
because
what
of
part one and part two? What is going to be the effect on the food import bill, given where you see the increases have gone so far?
Okay, so I'm gonna take your second question first because that one speaks directly to what we did with the Caribbean Supermarket Association. If you recall, we launched this Caribbean Association, and that was further to the narrative that CARICOM, and we had that meeting at the Investment Forum at Napa, if you guys recall, in August, where CARICOM leaders came together to say, listen, we're gonna aim to reduce the food import bill in the region by 25% by 2025. And that's something that leaders of CARICOM pledged to. We had Irfan Ali of Guyana, the president or prime minister, I'm not sure. Prime Minister Mia Motley of Barbados. Interestingly enough, Barbados has gone to the IMF, and we all know how painful that restructuring is going to be for Barbados. So on one hand, I am also very grateful that our government has made some difficult decisions so that we don't go to the IMF. The problem lies with the messaging, but we spoke about that already. So for us in the region, are we serious about food security? Because food security is a big thing. We've seen, is it that Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana are going to be exploring more projects to really capitalize on food security? We've heard a lot of rumblings from our leader and their leader, and we stand prepared. The reality is, though, I don't see it happening by 2025. When you consider that that's nearly 2.5 years away, that we could be 25% less in the food import bill. The food import bill in the region, I think, is about $5 or $6 billion US. In Trinidad and Tobago, it's probably like a couple billion. And the truth is that we aren't close to replacing. When you go into the supermarkets, 90% of what you see on the supermarket shelf is imported. And that's a fact. You can't get away from that. So that you're going to be so that tells you that you're going to be continuing to import what you see there, that the suppliers and distributors and the local manufacturers whose inputs of production are themselves imported are going to continue to be putting out what you see on the supermarket shelves. So we've been working very hard. We've been trying to get the best prices. In fact, I must say a big shout out to the worlds of manufacturing and distribution. They've been able to provide some import substitutes that are actually very good at the price point levels. Because we have a customer that works with budgets. They come into the stores, they pull out their phone, they do work out the numbers. They're very deal oriented. They shop by specials and promotions, and we as supermarkets now have to provide for them on a budget, and they stick to that budget.
I was going to ask that because someone asked me a question last week and I didn't have the answer.
Yeah.
In terms of the locally available or locally produced stuff, are they cheaper? Are they significantly cheaper?
No.
Including market produce.
Okay, so in terms of the locally manufactured stuff, that remember they're still importing the inputs for production. So if the inputs for production experience a price hike, that's something that we all have to work out. Also, keep in mind local produce. Remember worldwide, when you look at the crop nutrient profile, that fertilizers, we're talking about potash, we're talking about ammonia and urea based nitrates. Those things have gone up because the primary suppliers of those products are Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, and I think they produce up to 30% of the global supply of those products. And this has actually been a problem in agriculture. They said that those products have experienced such a high hike, and we've recently seen the poultry and egg producers bitterly complain about the fertilizers when it comes to production, because they've also experienced price hikes there for production, and that's something that's not going away anytime soon. So we're also looking for import substitutes at the level of local production, and it's something that is actually being a barrier to entry for new entrants when you look at agriculture locally. So, I mean, you could get all these incentives to go into agriculture from the side of the ministry, but you're not going to have enough capex to cover the cost of fertilizer for your production. So that's actually been something we've been looking at and been struggling to solve, quite honestly, Paul.
All right. I know we have had such extensive discussions with you, Rajiv, over the period of time. So I don't know if we could also include our listeners in this.
Yeah, sure.
The questions that they may have that we don't have, because
I'm very listen, guys. We always engage with the public, and as long as you guys moderate it, no problem.
One of the things that's come up also in the wake of the budget, in the context of the measures outlined by the minister. Rajiv, go on, or you just
sorry. Have a nice with the webcam here, sorting it out.
Okay, but you're hearing me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is the issue of wages and, well, let me separate it: entrepreneurship and building a stronger middle class. Do you think the middle class, as some are suggesting, is, I don't want to use the word under attack, but facing significant challenges like the lower socioeconomic groups?
Yeah.
Again, it's impacting the rest of the society.
Paul and Wendell and Steve, listen, we've had a confluence of factors affecting every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. We've had an erosion of savings from COVID-19, which means that every dollar in the bank account has been stretched to pay for bills because we haven't been earning, right? Now, we talk about COVID like if it was yesterday. It was just about, 4 months ago that we rolled back for the economy to reopen. And that's not going to help me recover when I've had 2 years of COVID-19, right? So we have that. We've seen businesses close because of COVID-19. We've seen businesses close because they haven't been able to get the foreign exchange. That is still a problem. That is still a major problem. We had a lot of commentators talking about devaluing the dollar prior to the budget. We've heard the Minister of Finance, and I for one, I'm grateful that there's no devaluation, because that would send everything up. That in itself is a very peculiar issue, and that I don't want to touch right now. But the long and short is that I'm glad it hasn't been devalued. And speaking to that too, we have a parallel trade where everybody buying forex on the side, and that is a market where you see that normally fetches a higher price than what you're paying at the bank. Now, keep in mind, you only get $100 by the bank. Yeah?
What does that mean on the side? Because there's been a lot of talk about this black market forex trade in the country, which is very lucrative because of the limitations that the banks are offering citizens and business people.
You have to keep in mind that when businesses need to survive, that there will become systems in place that cater for what they need for operation, and that is something that if the banks can't provide it, they will find it elsewhere. It's actually reminding me of this peculiar step taken last week. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the Tobacco Control Act came into play last week, where it was actually actively being enforced, so that you could only buy cigarettes, for example, at one cash point in the entire grocery, regardless of how big the grocery is. It could be a mega store, but you could only buy it at one cash point. So
that's a good thing. I hate cigarettes.
Yeah, well, boy, from a supermarket point of view, it doesn't make sense, because cigarettes are something that are expensive items. So you're sitting on stock that's very expensive.
Well, I understand that from a commercial point of view, but I'm talking about saving lives and reducing lung cancer.
No,
That's why I hate cigarettes. They could say
that
what they
would
want.
be
They could bring all the studies in the world. I know they have the tobacco lobby is strong and powerful. And it's a very, very lucrative global product. But cigarettes kill people. And I understand there's a high margin in it, but the less availability of cigarettes to citizens, the better for me. I find they should wipe out cigarettes.
Well, the margin
That's just my perspective.
No,
I hate cigarettes.
I
and
agree
tobacco.
with you, Paul. The margin is low. But so the point I'm trying
The
to make
margin
is,
and low in the cost of lung cancer.
oh yeah, for
Okay,
sure.
the margin is very high in the cost to the Ministry of Health, and that's what people don't understand. The margin is low for profits, but the margin is very high in the non-communicable diseases and the lung cancer and the deaths to society, particularly increasing for young people.
Okay, so the point
that's where the real cost is.
Yeah, so the point I'm making is this, Paul, right? So the regulations that are being enforced right now are driving the product out of supermarkets. So you're driving it out of the mainstream supermarkets and you're driving it into the parlors, the multinational supermarkets, elsewhere, roadside vending, these kind of things.
And they should clamp down on them too.
And I don't see them doing that.
Well, agreed, but it needs to be equally applied.
So,
I have no problem
my
with
point
that.
is this, right? You're driving a parallel trade that you cannot control because you've pushed it now out of the places that you would typically visit. Because them officers are going roadside to look for nobody who doing anything. That is the truth.
And they need to fix that.
Paul, I've been saying that for years. They just don't have the manpower. They don't have the resources.
They don't have the will.
They don't have the will. Because you go by them fellas. And them fellas not easy. You don't want to go by them. You'd faster go by the mainstream supermarket to pull them up about it. But you're not going to go by them guys.
I asked the question, what do you expect for Christmas? The last quarter in the year is here. October, November, December. And high demand for products around the world because of the Christmas celebration and Diwali is coming up also.
Listen, let me tell you something about Trinidadians. And I everybody predicted a bleak one during COVID, a bleak one during 21. Trinidadians, we're a very resilient, we're a very tradition-oriented people. And I could only imagine, even after Christmas, they're already looking forward to Carnival, right? And the truth is that when it comes to Christmas, we are such a folk that we want to make sure that we have something to celebrate, that we, be it family, be it friends, even if it's a small Christmas tree and a piece of pork, a punch, a cream, a ham, we is that kind of people. And Diwali, we still, this is such, for all the divisive rhetoric that our politicians give us. We one people. We are a people that like to come together. We enjoy Diwali. Everybody in the community that's come for Barfi, Gulab Jamun, and a Parasad, and this spirit, this festival of light does give a renewed feeling to all of us. So let me tell you, from that perspective, I have no doubt that they're gonna try to make it the best Diwali. They're gonna try to make it the best Christmas, and they're gonna have a time come Christmas Day. Everybody wants a little feast in their home, be it with a ham. Or a little Spanish rice or whatever it is. They want to
some more than some. Some will sacrifice and do a little more than some.
Yeah.
What are your impressions? What are the opportunities that you've seen in the budget?
What are the
opportunities? I mean, the budget is not all bad. What are the opportunities you've seen in terms of some of the policies outlined?
Paul, for me, when I look at the budget, I looking at it for two things. I looking at it for agriculture and food security because that is my forte, and I looking at it to see. Well, I guess some people will say the budget really wouldn't tell you too much about crime, but crime is a big problem in Trinidad and Tobago, and I want to see what comes in for national security, right? So, I suppose I have to wait.
What do you mean by that?
I have to wait a little bit to see what comes out. Well, crime is a huge problem, boy. It used to be.
I know, but when you say you're waiting to see what happens, the allocation has gone on to third largest now. I think it makes sense because philosophically, fixing crime is not necessarily about dumping more money into it. I'm happy that it's going in the education side and not the intervention side. But is not sometimes how much money you spend, it's how you spend the money and your policy.
Well, we had a meeting with the Commissioner of Police prior to the budget, and I have to say, I personally took confidence away from that meeting because he didn't sound like a politician. He sounded like somebody who genuinely wanted to address the issues. He obviously has his own issues with regards to the resources that he has. And I do agree with why you're ramping up FUL fees by 100% when we already have problems for firearms. And is it that you're trying to put FULs out of business people reach? That one was mind-boggling to me, Paul. I really couldn't agree with it. I still do agree with it, and I do understand it. But I suppose there's some method to the madness, as they say. For me, the budget, there were some opportunities that I saw. I took note of the youth homestead for agriculture. I thought that was very good because it's a recognition of the fact that yes, there are not a lot of people are getting back into agriculture. We need to make agriculture a little bit more attractive, and we need to reinvigorate the sector with the involvement of these young people. So that was something I took away.
How many times you've heard that thing in the last 10 years? That exact phrase you just put for it. How many times have you heard, not only this administration, the one before that and the one before that? Let's make agriculture more sexy. Let's get more young people into agriculture. We have people graduating from UE. We're going to get them in agriculture, and it has not materialized.
Well, let me flip the script, right? If you had to tell one of your sons, "Go boy, you're going into this thing," and then they say, look, they land grabbing, they shooting me for land.
Thief my products, they ain't doing nothing.
I can't get the pretty last in the unit.
I can't compete with the imports.
And I can't even get a weapon to protect myself because they just send up the fees 100%, right? So what you really want to tell the young people, boy?
That's my point. My point is we hear all these incentives for agriculture, for young up to get into agriculture. We hear all this agriculture, make agriculture sexy because we need food security. What you're saying is a poem. Yeah, no, we repeat every year for the last 15 years.
I'm a big fan and proponent of agriculture, but even I right now, Paul, wouldn't get into agriculture because of all the problems. Remember, a lot of people don't see this one in particular, but climate change is actually turning out to be a very real issue. I don't know if anybody's been noticing, but the days have been a lot hotter, and they've been the world itself has been going through periods of drought, which has made systems like irrigation more complex, which have made so it's also made the supply chain more volatile as a result. So there are so many issues when it comes to agriculture and TNT right now, Paul, that we have to look at.
But then are we applying what are now commonplace practices in other jurisdictions, including vertical agriculture, mega farms enclosures that don't need as much land, but are employing more technology, that increasing yield, which is a significant initial capex, but it yields down the road because it's not dependent on as much land space.
Yeah, so I looked at Novo Farms. They're doing amazing things with technology. They're actually producing. I don't know if you saw the videos with the choker where you add the hot water and you get back the slurry, and it's very cool what they're doing. So that's freeze dried tomatoes, that's freeze dried dal, that's freeze dried pumpkin, for example. And I think it's so cool what they're doing, but it takes a significant capital investment, which a lot of our farmers don't have. A lot of our farmers are among the lowest rung of the income bracket. They're very vulnerable. They live paycheck to paycheck. And the type of farming that is going to take us into the future, especially when you talk about vertical farming and hydroponics, is definitely capital intensive farming. And we've had some of that, but we don't have. We've had, like, for example, Blue Waters Limited would be in the game, Berry Cove would be in the game, but is it still out of reach of the average person? And that's something that I still feel the structure and framework isn't there to support them right now. I'm actually part of a multi-advisory committee with the Ministry of Agriculture. In fact, there's a meeting this morning, and these are some of the challenges being presented to us right now. And in addition to that, there's also challenges from market where the products can't even find a place on the shelf, Paul.
You know, Rajiv, as you raise the issue of agriculture, the Agricultural Society, where Dan Usuku was at one point in time, has gone very quiet. Why is that? You don't hear about them at all again, or because you would think that right after a budget you would have heard that, certainly heard that.
Yeah. So Wendell, I actually think that they have some issues. I recently followed up with NAMDEVCO, with who we frequently keep in touch with the team across there, because we used to work with the Agricultural Society whenever there was an excess in product that we tried to mop up across stores. The Agricultural Society, I believe they have a president right now, but they've been embroiled in a legal battle over the components of the board. Now, the truth is that is something that's very unfortunate right now, because I think out of that there's been another group that's been formed for the farmers. I think they call themselves the Sills Farmers Group. I met a couple of them in the Agri Investment Forum recently, so this is how I know this. And they've been trying, but they're in a state of flux and disorder and chaos right now.
Oh, you said the magic word. I try not to be unkind. Or you said the magic 2 words, I should say.
Yeah.
Danasuku.
Yeah. So I think her son-in-law or her daughter is maybe one of the vice presidents.
Again.
Yeah. So I
again, there's a common thread there.
Yeah.
Over many years. That's all I'll say.
Boy, Paul, I for me personally, I don't really care who it is. I just want to work with you to achieve things. And we've chatted, we've tried, and we will continue to do that. So that's all for now I'll say on that.
Your optimism is astounding. Let's go to the magic word of tourism. And in particular with regards to Tobago tourism and Trinidad tourism, where we have so much to offer, but we've never really defined our products to the point of Barbados or Jamaica, where they are maximizing. Jamaica just announced that they had their best ever summer in their history in tourism, best ever in their history coming out of a pandemic, because they have a very clearly defined product. Barbados, same thing. Not so much Trinidad and Tobago.
No, Paul, I've been wanting, as a tourist myself, I've been yearning to go to Jamaica and experience some of that good stuff that they've been selling, because
I went 3 times. We can't compete.
As you said, the product is clearly defined, right? So, I think when you talk about Tobago, the product is more clearly defined than when you talk about Trinidad. And I think Tobago, I definitely think that more could be done. And it may be a little bit unfortunate, because it doesn't take much to produce that product or the offering from the side of tourism. And I think that really needs to fall back at the level of the ministry to address. And I definitely see tourism, because we have a lot of folks, let's face the facts, we've had a lot of folks across the globe who have been shut up for 2 years or shuttered in for 2 years.
But look at Labor Day, look at Notting Hill in particular, look at Miami Carnival.
Yes.
We are going to have a bumper carnival, but can we translate that into a sustainable business and not just a once-a-year business? And are we going to have, are we putting in things in place to not only welcome home returning nationals who live abroad, diaspora, but also introducing the product to a new cadre of visitor who can bring pounds, who can bring US dollars?
So those festivals that you just mentioned, they've been huge. They've been huge because people are relishing in the ideology that they've survived COVID-19 and they want to have a good time and they want to have an experience, Paul, because that's what it's all about right now. And they're willing to pay for that experience, and how we as a nation can put out something that is attractive, sexy, and something from a tourist point of view, where we capture a tourist and say, listen, from a retention perspective, I want to come back to have that experience, is something that is going to be very onerous. I listen to I think that we need to recognize that Carnival is going to be a big earner, and it's something that we need to recognize, and it's something we need to appreciate as a nation, as a national product, that we put this out there. And I listened to some of the peacock between Trinidad and Tobago having its own carnival, Trinidad having its own carnival, and I think that
not necessarily a bad thing.
Not a bad thing.
I think they position their carnival in a very smart and strategic manner.
Yeah, and I think it's only good if you could maximize the revenues in particular for each one of the islands. And I definitely have huge expectations.
Maximize and manage.
Maximize and manage, definitely, Paul. So, from that perspective, I think we're ready. I think that we need to acknowledge, we need to support those players in the creative arts also, to ensure that they have what they need to make this the greatest show on earth.
Well, I know we're going to have a great carnival product. My issue is, and Jamaica has been very successful at being able to navigate what had been traditionally a high crime situation, with making tourists feel safe in particular tourist zones. And I'm saying it plainly, what happens in Kingston do happen in Montego Bay.
Yeah, I always think back about that unfortunate incident with the Japanese girl, and that somehow always comes up in my mind when I think about tourists and Trinidad. But we definitely could take a few lessons away from our Caribbean neighbors when it comes to maximizing it, because let's face it, we're in the mature end. We always talk about diversification. This is one of those opportunities to diversify, Paul.
But hold on, to be fair to our police and our protective services, we have relatively safe carnivals. As a matter of fact, they are to me, they are always at their best during carnival time in terms of ensuring safety and security. And that's
I agree with that, Wendell.
Regardless of which government or which commissioner.
You travel and you have real friends outside Wendell. And yes, that's what you said is true. Yeah. But the overall perception of people looking in to possibly come to partake is not a safe place.
Right. So because of what we experienced throughout the rest of the year, but I'm speaking specifically to carnival. We've had relatively safe carnivals over.
But the potential visitor ain't looking at having a relatively safe carnival, looking at the overall country crime profile.
Yeah, I think they look a lot at those advisories as well that are put out. I think that is something we need to keep an eye on, because remember, violent crime in Trinidad and Tobago, if we were to work with the recent history, we've seen a lot of that in particular. That is a major concern to me when we see the assault rifles coming out in daylight robberies. That we have a problem
with the frequency they're coming out.
And it's assault rifles, this thing looking like the Hollywood movies where they're coming out and they're spraying the vehicle and thing. And that will make its way into the advisories of certain countries that you're looking to import these visitors from. So you need to look at that very carefully.
Yeah.
What are manufacturers telling you about the outlook for the next year?
Listen, everybody is working. Nobody in our business is really in the business of pessimism, even though they will tell you things bad, right? Because things not great. You have higher costs for inputs of production. You have higher costs generally in the cost of living. Now that fuel going up, everybody got to look at their staff and figure out, well, who need more and that kind of thing. But the reality is that you're seeing more consumption patterns because you have an active economy as opposed to a lockdown economy. And where you see that now, you have tempered optimism for the throughput of whatever it is that you're distributing or you're manufacturing. And especially when you talk about Carnival, you look into that too, to push more out. So is it that we are looking, we're very hopeful about the future. I think what a lot of people were looking for was the overarching economic strategy, a longer term outlook that came perhaps from the budget, maybe with an eye
Well,
on.
do you agree with Mariana Brown and others that have said this is a threading water budget, as a placeholder budget, as opposed to a transformational, progress-driven budget?
So when you talk when you're the government and you put out a budget, you're not gonna please everybody, right? So the truth is that I do think the government did try its best, or at least what they considered to be something that they would put out. But I think what they needed to communicate was the longer term strategy that, listen, we're working towards this in the non-energy sector. But I also think that they said, listen, the energy sector is it, and we're going to have to rely on it, and nothing is wrong with that. I think also that when Mariano says what he says, I tend to agree with him, because he was a former Minister of Finance. He knows the area and arena very well, and that we're looking to inject some confidence, because you have local entrepreneurs and foreign investors who want to see a level of confidence if they're going to be spending their money here. And that is the crux of the whole situation in the business community. If I'm going to make an investment that is millions of dollars, I need to feel that the factors in the economy, be they crime, be they socio-political, be they socio-economic, that they're stable enough to offer me that environment for the investment and the confidence I need to enjoy for years to come.
What are your thoughts on
Just a
availability
correction.
of labor?
Mariano is a former Minister of Trade and Industry.
Okay,
the former Minister of Finance is now also in the news.
What are your thoughts on the labor market and the availability of labor? People putting out posted jobs, and I guess, I don't know, what's the situation?
The truth is that I think we discussed that last time I was here. And we have issues in the labor market. You could take a drive by some of the malls, and you can look at signs outside the windows that listen, we're hiring, or cashiers wanted, or packers needed, and we have trouble filling those spots. Is it that people think that it's something that they don't want to get into? And you also have to look at the issue of immigrant labor, because there's been lacking a little bit in terms of the policies required to really put these people into longer term positions, and how we deal with them. But the labor market has always been a traditional bane for our industry, Paul. It's been something that just, listen, you have a high attritional turnover in terms of the people that you hire, because they're always moving on. They come in for a little while, they stay a little while, they realize they don't like it, they realize it's too labor intensive in the groceries or any warehouses, and they say, nah, boy, that's not for me, and then they move on.
Well, because they consider a dead-end job, quite frankly. Small pay, long hours, no progress.
Yep. So it's something that we deal with, and it's something that we, have to deal with all the time. So, I don't want to say too much more, because it's still going to be a problem next year.
All right, Rajiv, thanks so much, man. Appreciate it as usual.
Yep.
All right, guys.
I'm going to say Minister of Trade, Rajiv.
All the best to you.
All right, guys. Have a wonderful.
Let's speak it into the atmosphere. Minister of Trade, Rajiv Diptee.
Well, it was a few months ago where I asked him which seat he was looking at,
You did.
Remember that?
You did.
No. He's not going to do seat. He's going to be a senator. He's not going to do seat.
I actually real happy where I am, guys.
He will do much better in the upper house. I don't think he's of the built for that rough and tumble down below there.
I agreed with Paul here this morning, because after I hear some of the things I heard last week,
you ain't want to be down there.
Yep. All right, fellas. Have a good one.
All the best to you, Rajiv. All right, take care. All right, of course, Rajiv
Recording
Diptee,
stopped.
President of the Supermarket Association of Trinidad and Tobago. As we head towards our 8 o'clock news, let's take a quick look. Let's see what's happening traffic-wise. I'll give it to you now. And see. We also got a couple of messages. No, okay.